All right, Joe Biden is a congenital liar about little things and big things. He is a puppet. It's weekend at Biden's. And I mean, they have better things to do than waste time talking to a guy who has no real authority.
Laura Ingraham just dropped a bombshell that's shaking everyone up. She revealed something so scary that it's hard to believe it's true. This last piece of information is something we're really not supposed to know. What could be so terrifying that it's been hidden from us all this time? Join us as we uncover the dark secrets behind this intriguing revelation from the government. Biden and his real bosses. Laura Ingraham, speaking with a compelling tone, stresses that President Biden's decisions have led the country into a very disordered state. McConnell's spokesperson attempted to brush off the concerns, claiming that Mitch simply felt a bit overwhelmed momentarily during a press conference. Laura argues that it's obvious to international leaders that Biden doesn't have much actual power. She suggests that if other countries want to negotiate better deals with the U.S. or get more money from us, they should talk to people like John Kerry or Janet Yellen, or even go directly to Biden's major donors who really influence decisions about trading with China or the funding of never-ending conflicts. She describes Biden as just a figurehead, comparing his presidency to the movie Weekend at Bernie's, meaning that talking to him is pointless because he doesn't really have control. Laura recalls her days working for President Reagan, noting that he wasn't well-liked in Europe because he represented a strong America. She believes that Europe prefers a weaker America because it's easier for them to influence a weaker leader. In her opinion, having a weak U.S. president works well for Europe. She criticizes Joe Biden for not being truthful about many things, big and small. Laura points out the significant challenges within both political parties as the government gets ready to start important discussions about the budget. She highlights the ages of the key negotiators. Biden is 80, Schumer is 72, McConnell is 81, and both McCarthy and Hakeem Jeffries are in their 50s. She questions whether they are all fit enough to handle such important and demanding discussions. Laura also mentions a past incident where Senator Biden was caught using phrases and gestures from a speech by British Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock during a debate. She believes this shows a pattern of dishonesty that has continued into his presidency, affecting even simple matters like the cost of gasoline and extending to serious issues like his family's foreign financial dealings. Laura suggests that Biden might be compromised not just by his health, but also by the potentially unethical gains his family has made overseas. Furthermore, Laura argues that neither McConnell nor Biden should remain in their roles, pointing out their ages and health concerns. She commends McConnell for his work on Supreme Court nominations, but thinks it's time for him to retire and enjoy his later years. She calls for compassion from members of the Republican Party and suggests they should have encouraged McConnell to step aside after a recent episode that raised doubts about his ability to serve effectively, and the best is yet to come. On another subject, Laura talks about China and its plans for the U.S. They clearly want to push America off its top spot globally by starting to use their own currency more. This move could really hurt American middle-class families and potentially end America's role as a superpower. There's a lot to unpack here, which we'll get into soon. But what's striking is that these global influencers don't seem to care much about the everyday workers in America. They're certainly not losing sleep over America losing its clout worldwide. Instead, their attention is fixed on the economic issues in China. Those advising President Biden are preoccupied with managing China's weakening economic state. Among them, Bret Stephens, a columnist for the New York Times, who some say leans Republican, is actively pushing for the U.S. to offer financial help to Beijing. Stephens makes the case that the U.S. should drop the tariffs on Chinese imports that were set during Trump's term, claiming this would demonstrate American economic generosity. Interestingly, this proposed generosity is directed towards China, not the regular folks at home. It's almost unbelievable when you think about the current state of our trade dealings with China. It's a total disaster. Our trade deficit has skyrocketed from $38 billion in 2020 to a staggering $352.3 billion last year. Yet figures like Janet Yellen, Gina Raimondo, Bret Stephens, and others in the Washington, D.C. circle don't seem to think it's enough. They would probably be thrilled if our trade deficit were even larger, and if we were even more reliant on China for our essential supplies. Sure, this would mean cheaper products for us to buy, but it also means China gets richer, can buy more military gear, and poses a bigger threat to others. No matter the situation, the answer from these insiders is always the same. We need to deepen our interactions with China. They keep pushing for more engagement, regardless of China's growing economy. Now we look at Laura's thoughts on both international relations and what's happening here at home. The drama of Black Americans moving south. In the middle of the ongoing drama of national unrest, Laura Ingraham's distinctive and powerful voice stands out. She consistently reminds us that holding our leaders accountable and ensuring thoughtful management are key to maintaining a strong democracy. Meanwhile, some former scholars who've turned into political campaigners are trying to argue that Trump should be constitutionally prevented from running for office again. This notion seems totally absurd, especially coming from judges who used to claim they were dedicated to the original meaning of the U.S. Constitution, like Mike Ludig, who is well known in these discussions. Think about this. These same people have fervently argued that Trump's team grossly misinterpreted the Constitution by challenging state vote counts and proposing alternative elector groups. This is seriously concerning. It's peculiar that these concerns were absent when threats were aimed at Kavanaugh. When their sly maneuvers fail, other media supporters take over, trying to promote the idea of effectively dividing states based on race. Charles Blow, a notable progressive, advocates for increasing Black influence through relocation, yet he seems to miss the reasons behind the significant migration of Black communities to the southern states. This overlooks the historical and socioeconomic factors that have driven such movements, which is crucial to understanding the whole picture. The relationship between China and the United States has been long and filled with both cooperation and disagreement. Initially, their interaction was limited, mostly involving trade. Back in 1784, an American ship called the Empress of China made its way to Canton, now known as Guangzhou, marking the start of a new chapter in economic ties. During the early 1800s, American involvement in China grew, especially during the Opium Wars, when American traders joined British merchants in the opium trade, which led to tension and conflicts. In 1844, the Treaty of Guangxia was signed, which allowed the United States similar trading rights in China as European countries had. This treaty was one of many that were not fair to China and greatly favored Western powers. Throughout the 19th century, American missionaries also played a significant role in China by spreading Christianity and setting up schools and hospitals. Keep watching for more. The late 1800s and early 1900s brought more developments in the relationship between the two nations. The Burlingame Treaty of 1868 was aimed at fostering friendly relations and even gave China the right to send laborers to the United States. However, this period also saw the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, which severely limited Chinese immigration to the United States, showing a rise in anti-Chinese feelings in labor competition in America. The early 1900s were a time of internal strife for China, culminating in the rise of the Republic of China in 1912 after the fall of the Qing dynasty. During World War II, China and the United States became allies against Japan, with the United States providing significant military and economic support to Chinese forces. This alliance helped build a mutual respect and friendship between the two countries. However, after World War II, the dynamics changed with the Chinese Civil War and the rise of the People's Republic of China, PRC, in 1949 under Mao Zedong. The United States, aligning itself with the Republic of China government that had retreated to Taiwan, did not recognize the PRC for many years. The U.S. continued diplomatic ties with Taiwan, considering it the legitimate government of all China. The Korean War from 1950 to 1953 deepened the divide, with China and the United States supporting different sides, exacerbating the hostility that lasted through the 1950s and 1960s, influenced by the broader Cold War dynamics and conflicting interests in Asia, especially over Vietnam. The early 1970s saw a thaw in relations, driven by strategic needs to counterbalance Soviet influence. This period included confidential meetings and diplomatic moves, famously highlighted by President Richard Nixon's visit to China in 1972. Facilitated by then National Security Advisor Henry Kissinger, Nixon's trip marked a new phase of normalization between the two countries, leading to the Shanghai Communique, which acknowledged the One China policy among other principles for future relations. Diplomatic relations between the United States and the PRC were formally established on January 1, 1979, under President Jimmy Carter. This led to the United States severing official ties with Taiwan, though it continued unofficial relations through the Taiwan Relations Act, which allowed ongoing arms sales to Taiwan for self-defense. Laura gives us a closer look at the history and current state of the U.S.-China relationship. China's big moves in history, the 1980s and 1990s, saw booming economic and cultural exchanges. Deng Xiaoping's economic reforms opened China to global markets, and American businesses were quick to invest, creating a deep economic interdependence. Yet this period also had its tensions, particularly highlighted by the U.S. condemnation of the Chinese government's actions during the Tiananmen Square protests in 1989, which briefly froze relations. The late 20th and early 21st centuries were times of both cooperation and competition. The U.S. supported China's entry into the World Trade Organization in 2001, showing a commitment to integrating China into the global economy. This era also saw significant U.S. investment in China and growing trade ties, although concerns about trade imbalances and intellectual property rights remained. Post-2001, the global war on terror brought the U.S. and China closer in some ways, with China supporting U.S. efforts in Afghanistan. However, strategic competition persisted over issues like Taiwan, human rights, and China's increasing military presence in the Asia-Pacific. During the Obama administration, efforts to build a constructive relationship focused on mutual interests like climate change and global economic stability. Yet Obama's pivot to Asia strategy was viewed by China as an attempt to contain its rise, leading to strategic tension. The Trump administration took a more confrontational approach, especially in trade, leading to a trade war with tariffs and counter-tariffs. Issues like technology theft and intellectual property rights dominated their interactions. The COVID-19 pandemic added strain, with both countries exchanging accusations over virus management. Recently, the Biden administration has continued to navigate this complex relationship, balancing competition and cooperation. Issues like human rights, technology competition, and regional security remain contentious, yet there are still areas where cooperation is possible, such as climate change and global health. The history of U.S.-China relations is a tale of shifting strategies influenced by global politics, domestic issues, and economic needs. Despite many tensions and rivalries, both nations have managed to find ways to work together on important global challenges, showing the complex and multi-layered nature of their relationship. Laura Ingraham is stirring up quite a discussion these days. She's pointing out something interesting about Black Americans who are moving to states led by Republicans. These places, she notes, have stronger economies and better job opportunities. It's a big shift, and she thinks it's something people should talk more about. Laura also criticizes how the Biden administration seems to be dealing with China. She's upset because Gina Raimondo, who's in charge of commerce, had a meeting with top female executives where they talked about investing in China. Laura compares this to the kind of heavy-handed promotion of one's own country that she attributes to China's government. She sees this as a troubling sign that the U.S. administration might be getting too cozy with China. But that's not all. She points out that China supports Russia, which is another complicated international relationship. But despite this, the U.S. keeps trying to maintain good relations with China. Laura questions why Democrats seem to trust China more than they trust their own countrymen from the Republican Party. Laura's focus isn't just on international affairs. She's also very concerned with domestic issues, especially how the Democratic Party's policies are affecting Black Americans living in cities. She argues that the Democrats aren't managing things well, especially when it comes to education and crime. She's especially critical of their stance against school choice, which would allow students to escape failing public schools and get a better education elsewhere. Then there's Hunter Biden's situation, which Laura brings up to highlight what she sees as hypocrisy or failure in the Democratic Party. Hunter Biden has been losing lawyers left and right, and Laura sees this as a sign of deeper problems. She suggests that these troubles might cause Black Americans and others who have traditionally supported Democrats to rethink their loyalty. Laura doesn't stop there. She also talks about what she sees as the Democratic Party's plan to stay in power through tactics like mail-in voting and early voting. She's pretty skeptical about these methods, suggesting they could be used to tilt elections unfairly. On top of all this, she accuses the Democrats of being too soft on crime, not doing enough to lower energy costs, and generally calling Republicans racist instead of addressing real issues. She's also very critical of how the Democrats handle trade secrets and intellectual property, especially in their dealings with China. According to Laura, it's like letting the fox guard the henhouse, a really bad idea that could end up hurting everyone. Finally, we explore Laura's take on global economic plans and what they mean for America. Laura's controversial view on race talk. Laura wraps up her commentary by talking about the media. She accuses them of helping the Democrats by focusing on negative stories about Republicans, especially when it comes to race. She points out how quick the media is to label all Trump supporters as racist based on the actions of a few. Laura Ingraham is calling for a closer look at how the Democratic Party is handling various issues, from international relations to domestic policies. She wants her audience to think critically about what's going on and to consider whether the Democrats are really acting in the best interests of the country or just trying to hold on to power. She's not shy about sharing her views, and whether you agree with her or not, she definitely makes you think. Laura Ingraham takes a hard look at the words of Eugene Robinson from the Washington Post. Robinson suggests that it was only a matter of time before people who support Trump would turn violent and racist against those trying to hold Trump accountable. He thinks that liking Trump is as bad as supporting hateful actions like cross-burning. Laura disagrees strongly. She questions why Robinson would link supporting a political figure with such extreme and hateful behavior. She also dives into bigger issues on the world stage, like the ineffective climate agreements between John Kerry and China. Laura sees these as just empty actions, not real solutions. She finds it ridiculous that while the U.S. is cutting down on oil and gas use, China is still buying lots of oil from Russia and Iran. This, she argues, shows a big problem with how America is dealing with energy and global politics. Laura points out that China is doing really well economically. They're buying more oil, making more money, and growing stronger. At the same time, they want to replace the US dollar with their currency in global trade, which could really hurt the American economy and reduce its power worldwide. She criticizes the global leaders, who she feels are ignoring the needs of regular working people in America while being too focused on China's economic issues. And there's more. Back at home, Laura is upset about people like Bret Stephens and others in Washington who think the U.S. should reduce tariffs on Chinese goods. Stephens argues that this would show America's generosity. Laura finds this absurd because regular Americans don't get such generosity from their own government. The trade deficit with China has gotten much worse, going from $38 billion in 2020 to over $352 billion last year. Laura believes that some people in Washington would actually prefer it if this number were even higher. She argues that these people seem happy to make America more dependent on China for goods and supplies. This could make things cheaper here, but it would also make China even richer and more powerful. They could buy more weapons and have more influence over other countries. Laura thinks that the constant push from American leaders to engage more with China, no matter what, is a mistake. Ingraham emphasizes the importance of keeping America strong and independent. She warns against the ideas of those she calls political hacks, who now say that Trump should be barred from running for office again based on their interpretations of the Constitution. Laura is especially annoyed by this because some of these people used to say they followed the Constitution closely. Now they seem to be changing their tune just to keep Trump out. Laura uses her show to push for clear thinking and strong policies that keep America safe and prosperous. She calls on her listeners to think about what it means when America gives up power and influence to make other countries like China happy. She argues that this could lead to big problems, not just with the economy, but with national security and independence. Biden is being manipulated. Laura Ingraham is not holding back, and neither are we. She has made everyone realize how Biden is just a puppet in this grand show called American politics. But why does she and many others think Biden is not calling the shots? First of all, it is Joe Biden, an 81-year-old person. Sure, he has had a long career, been a senator, vice president, and now president. But let's be honest, those glory days are way behind him. Nowadays, what do we see? A president who often stumbles over his words, forgets where he is, and needs constant guidance. The media might try to shield him, but we all see the bloopers. Sometimes it is just funny watching him on TV. It is like watching someone trying to find their way out of a maze with a blindfold on. So why is he there? According to Laura, he is not the one in charge. He has a team of handlers who guide his every move and make sure he sticks to the script. Of course, this is because of Biden's age, but he is also not given full power as he does not have the capability to lead a country like America. And then there is the big line you always hear from Biden's supporters that he is better than Trump. Really? That's the bar now. Laura argues that Biden is just a kinder face to the same problems. Trump was branded as a racist and controversial, and sure, there is plenty to back that up. But Biden is not a saint either. There is plenty of old footage of him making insensitive remarks. But somehow that is brushed under the rug. The media paints him as the kindly grandpa who has our best interests at heart. Disagree with that narrative and suddenly you are labeled as some right-wing extremist. Now let's talk about the real power brokers. Who are they? According to Laura, it is the elites, the ones with money and influence, who stay hidden in the shadows. These are the people truly steering the ship. These are the people who make decisions that affect us all, while Biden plays the role of a figurehead. Laura claims that these power brokers are not in the public eye, but their influence is everywhere. They profit from wars, manipulate the economy, and push their agendas without ever stepping into the spotlight. Take the war in Ukraine. Both Democrats and Republicans support it because, let's face it, wars make politicians rich. This game is all about the money. Have you ever wondered how politicians on a $200K salary end up as multimillionaires? It is not rocket science. You don't need a degree in philosophy to know the answer. It is clear that they are playing the game behind closed doors. They are making deals that fatten their wallets. And we are not feeding you some kind of far-fetched conspiracy. It is the truth, and it is right in front of us. And what about the double standards? Trump gets impeached and indicted, yet Hunter Biden gets a slap on the wrist, and Joe Biden remains untouched. The media barely questions him, and any reporter who dares to bring up something controversial gets shut down. So what's the truth here? Laura believes America is not just run by Democrats or Republicans, it is a uni-party system. They bicker in public but shake hands in private. They are united by their shared interest in keeping the status quo. Biden is the perfect puppet for this setup. He is like an AI-generated human bot, there to repeat the narrative that keeps these elites in power. Look, this is not just about being anti-Biden. Everyone was better for America. America deserves a leader who can genuinely guide the country, not someone who is being led around. The media's constant positive spin on Biden is frustrating. We should be asking for more, demanding more, and not settling for a puppet president who is just there to read the lines. And if you claim that we have other authoritative figures who are controlling and leading the country in a better way, we want to stop you right there. Do you really think McConnell is better than Biden? Or that Schumer is leading the country better than others? What's wrong with McConnell? Recently, during a routine event in Kentucky, McConnell had a moment that left everyone shocked. A reporter asked him about running for re-election in 2026, and suddenly he just froze. He stood there like a statue, gripping his lectern, eyes wide open, but not a word came out. An aide had to step in and escort him away. And an even more surprising thing is that this was not the first time. It was the second time in a few weeks that he had had such a public freeze-up. Now let's get real for a second. This man is one of the most powerful figures in our government. He is making decisions that impact not just America, but the entire world. Yet he is out here freezing up in the middle of press conferences. How embarrassing, terrifying, and thought-provoking is that? The day after this latest incident, the U.S. Capitol doctor cleared him to keep working. The doctor just said that he suffered an occasional lightheadedness from a past concussion and maybe a bit of dehydration. Seriously? That's all we get? We are not being given the whole truth. Laura Ingraham claims that she is not shocked that this is happening. I mean, the guy is 81, but what's really alarming is that we are still letting him run the show. In 2020, his hands and mouth looked bruised, and he brushed it off like it was nothing. Then in March 2023, he fell, hit his head, and got a concussion. He was out for 6 weeks, and let's be honest, this probably is not the only fall he has had recently. These events clearly show he is not in top physical health. He cannot even take care of himself. How is he supposed to run a whole country? Doctors got a rare glimpse of his episodes thanks to those tapes. Neurologists noted that McConnell's gaze shifted. He clung to the lectern without collapsing, but he was mute. According to neurologists, these are classic signs of a partial seizure. Even if he is not at his best, why is he still in such an important position in the country? Because, like Laura said, he is a puppet. Yes, just like Biden. Easy to control, easy to manipulate. The power brokers love that. They need someone who can be led around, who won't rock the boat. McConnell fits the bill perfectly, but according to Laura, he must leave now. He must be at home enjoying his twilight years. The next question is why Laura thinks McConnell should be made to leave his position even when he is just a puppet and not really making any decisions. A weak America is a happy Europe? According to Laura, the concern is not about McConnell or Biden. It is the bigger picture that is terrifying. Both McConnell and Biden might be puppets, but their presence makes America look weak. And in politics, image is everything. So why does this matter? As Laura stated, the time when President Reagan was ruling America, the whole story was different. He was a strong leader. Under Reagan, America projected strength and confidence. Now compare that with Biden's tenure, and it is like night and day. Reagan was decisive, unyielding, and unapologetically strong. Biden, on the other hand, is often perceived as hesitant and frail. Back in the day, Europe was not a big fan of Reagan. They saw him as too strong, too dominant. He pushed for American interests unapologetically, and that ruffled some feathers across the pond. That strength kept allies in line and adversaries at bay. Reagan's leadership ensured that America was respected, if not always liked. Now let's look at the current scenario. Europe is pretty happy with a weak America. Why? Because it benefits them. A strong America means Europe has to play second fiddle. They have to fall in line with America's decisions and strategies. But a weak America? That gives Europe room to maneuver, to assert its own agenda without worrying about clashing with the dominant U.S. During Reagan's era, America's military and economic policies were strong. The economy boomed and the military was formidable. Europe had no choice but to cooperate, even if they did not want to. But if we compare that to today, Europe is able to push its own policies more aggressively, knowing there is less risk of a strong American counter. For example, take the recent NATO dynamics. Under Biden, there is a sense that Europe can lead more initiatives without heavy American oversight. And it is not just about military strength. Economically, a strong America often means a dominant dollar, strict trade policies, and influential economic strategies. A weaker America means Europe can play a bigger role in global trade negotiations, push the euro's influence, and change economic policies that benefit them more directly. So when Laura says McConnell and Biden make America look weak, she is not talking about their individual performances. She refers to the ripple effect on global perception and strategy. A weak America gives Europe leverage, freedom, and less competition for global leadership, which is the last thing America needs right now. Most people still argue that Biden is the best option we have right now. But is he? Biden's web of deceit. Do you really think the best option for America would lie to its people? No, he or she would not. But Biden lies all the time. He has even lied about his academic qualifications. According to Biden, he graduated at the top of his class in law school. He claimed this at a campaign appearance in New Hampshire. But the truth is, he was near the bottom. He finished 76 out of 85 students. That was not an accidental slip-up. It was a blatant lie designed to make him look smarter and more accomplished than he actually is. And then there is the South Africa story. Biden claimed he was arrested while trying to meet Nelson Mandela. He has made this claim at least 3 times. He wanted to sound heroic, except it never happened. No records, no witnesses, nothing to back up this tall tale. It is another clear example of Biden fabricating events to boost his image. Going further back, Biden has a well-documented history of plagiarism. During his 1987 presidential campaign, it came to light that he lifted entire passages from British politician Neil Kinnock's speeches. And not just once. Biden was caught multiple times plagiarizing other people's work. This scandal was so bad it forced him to drop out of the race. Plagiarism is a serious offense, especially for someone aspiring to the presidency. Do you still think he is the best option for America? Now let's not go so far back in the past. Just look at his time as vice president. Biden often boasted about his role in foreign policy successes. However, many of these claims don't hold water. He has taken credit for everything from ending the Iraq War to negotiating climate deals. But insiders and experts often credit these achievements to others or describe Biden's contributions as minimal. More recently, let's talk about the Afghanistan withdrawal. Biden assured the American public that the Afghan government could hold its own against the Taliban. What happened next? The Taliban swept through the country in days, leading to a chaotic and deadly evacuation. Biden's statements were grossly misleading. Another point of contention is Biden's stance on fracking. During his campaign, he promised he would not ban fracking. Yet his administration's policies have aimed to curtail it significantly. This flip-flop is a direct contradiction of his promises to voters. Maybe he is doing this on purpose, or maybe the ones who are controlling him not letting him do what he wants to do. Then there's the whole Hunter Biden scandal. Biden claimed he had no involvement in his son's business dealings. However, emails and witness testimonies suggest otherwise. There is a growing pile of evidence indicating that Biden was more involved than he lets on. And let's not forget the COVID-19 vaccine rollout. Biden promised 100 million vaccines in his first 100 days. It was a goal that was already on track thanks to the previous administration's efforts. Yet he took full credit for it. He conveniently ignored the groundwork laid before him. So when people say Biden is a better leader than Trump, grab them by their shoulders, shake them, and tell them to look at the facts. Biden's history is riddled with lies, misstatements, and broken promises. He has built a career on a web of deceit, and it is time we started calling it out. And now it is more important than ever because we have proof that he is not in perfect health to run this country. Laura Ingraham is not mincing words when she says neither McConnell nor Biden should be in their current jobs. We all see it. McConnell freezing up at press conferences, Biden stumbling over words and decisions. They are of old age, yes, but they are also incompetent. And let's not ignore the elephant in the room. Biden's foreign money trail. The millions his family has reportedly made overseas suggest he is compromised. Corruption is one thing, but corruption combined with declining health is a dangerous mix. He is being potentially influenced by foreign cash. If we sit back and don't do anything about it, we are going to regret it soon. There is not just a foreign money trail, there is a foreign alliance currently being formed that is going to haunt America for years. Do you know what it is? The China syndrome. Laura Ingraham has called out Biden for not responding strictly to China's clever moves. It is no secret that Biden's approach to China has been all about cooperation. But let's be real, this is not working out in America's favor. First off, the trade deficit with China is through the roof. In 2020, it was already $38 billion. But now, we are looking at a jaw-dropping $352 billion. That's a lot of American money flowing into Chinese pockets. This massive trade deficit also means job losses here at home. Manufacturing jobs, which were once the backbone of American industry, have been shipped overseas. This has left countless Americans out of work. Now let's get into the political dynamics. Laura has been pretty vocal about how Democrats seem to trust China more than their Republican counterparts. They are always willing to give China the benefit of the doubt. But would they ever extend the same courtesy to Republicans? Absolutely not. It is a double standard that's as clear as day. The Biden administration's strategy seems to be to keep China close, no matter the cost. They argue that more engagement with China is necessary. But what's the real price we are paying for this relationship? We are making America weaker by the day. We are compromising our economic stability, national security, and even our global standing. Let's not forget about the whole mail-in ballot debacle. Democrats push for more mail-in ballots and early voting. They argue it is for the sake of democracy, but Laura suggests it is really to swap the populist vote and keep the same old, ineffective leaders in power, especially when the octogenarian leader cannot even find his way off the stage. And then there is the media. The press is quick to fan the flames of division. They paint any criticism of Biden as racist or unfounded. But when it comes to China, they are all about restoring trust and regular conversations. Politico even praised China for committing to regular talks. They call it an important step. This is so wrong. We are giving them a pat on the back for basic diplomacy while ignoring their human rights abuses and aggressive global tactics. What's China's endgame here? Simple. They want to supplant America on the global stage. Part of this strategy involves pushing for the dollarization process, which would be a direct hit to our middle class in the end of America's superpower status. And guess what? The globalists are not worried about this at all. They are too busy managing China's decline and even discussing potential bailouts for Beijing. Biden's administration has been talking about dropping Trump-era tariffs on Chinese imports. They argue it shows American economic magnanimity, but who benefits from this? Certainly not the average American. It is China that stands to gain, with more money flowing into their economy. It will enable them to buy more weapons and threaten more people. Biden has also made some climate change agreements with China. To be honest, they are a joke. While we are bending over backward to cut fossil fuel use, China is happily buying oil from Russia and Iran, swimming in resources and laughing all the way to the bank. The establishment keeps saying we need more engagement with China. But what does that really mean? More dependence on them for our supply chains, more economic imbalance, and more power in their hands. Laura has been clear about this. The establishment would rather maintain good relations with the CCP than with the 74 million Americans who voted for Trump. They prefer the communist Chinese model over the traditional American values. As long as they can get away with it politically, they will keep prioritizing the CCP's interests over those of Middle America. This means that those lost manufacturing jobs were not an accident. China's rise and America's decline in manufacturing were the results of deliberate policies. And if the establishment gets its way, in 2024, this will be their policy again. So if Biden is not our best option now, Trump is. Trump versus Biden. If we want to choose who is better, we don't have to talk hypothetically. Both serve as presidents, so we have stats on both of their accomplishments. So let's talk with proof. Who handled the economy better? Under Trump, things were great. The GDP grew at about 2.5% annually before COVID-19 hit. Unemployment was at a 50-year low of 3.5% in February 2020. The stock market was on fire, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average jumping over 50% from the start of his term to its peak before the pandemic. Now, Biden came into office with the economy in a rough spot because of COVID-19. But the GDP bounced back with a solid 5.9% growth rate in 2021, thanks to big stimulus packages. In 2023, the GDP increase was about 2.5%, which is about the same figure as Trump accomplished. However, unemployment rates have increased during Biden's rule, and we all know the reason why. The number rose to 4.1% in this July. Inflation is high at the moment. Even though the stock market is climbing, it is still not doing so as dramatically as during Trump's early years. Trump added about 6.6 million jobs before the pandemic struck. His administration pushed for deregulation and tax cuts, which helped spur job growth. Biden, on the other hand, added 6.6 million jobs just in his first year. This was huge, especially considering we were recovering from the pandemic. Businesses were reopening, and those stimulus checks really boosted spending. But then comes his biggest negative point. Biden has started to depend a lot on China. Trump played hardball with trade. He slapped tariffs on China, trying to cut down the trade deficit and bring manufacturing jobs back. While the trade deficit with China did decrease a bit, the tariffs hurt some American businesses that relied on imported materials. On the other hand, Biden happily gave manufacturing jobs to China. Another plus point Trump has is his Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which slashed corporate tax rates. He also passed the First Step Act for criminal justice reform. But his efforts to repeal the Affordable Care Act did not go anywhere. Biden passed the massive $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan for COVID-19 relief and got a bipartisan infrastructure bill through. His Build Back Better plan, though, has hit a lot of roadblocks in Congress. Comparing Trump and Biden's presidencies, we can see that each had their moments. Both had their highs and lows. But what to do now? Now that we know Biden is the puppet and Trump had his own issues with controversy and division, who should America choose? What to do now? If Laura Ingraham's claims are even half true, it is a serious wake-up call. We cannot just accept things at face value anymore. It is time to look deeper, question what we are being told, and demand better from our leaders. The future of America depends on it. Why are we putting up with leaders who seem more like puppets than real decision-makers? It is time to demand better. We need leaders who are sharp, capable, and fully present. The American people deserve more than figureheads who need constant assistance just to get through a press conference. We need to start looking for new leaders who can genuinely represent and fight for us. Leaders who can stand on their own, make strong decisions, and bring people together. It is time for a change. The American people deserve leadership that is transparent, accountable, and truly in charge. To make the best choice, you need to look for leaders who are transparent, strong, and genuinely care about the country. Research their track records, listen to their plans, and see if they can unite people rather than divide them. Don't just rely on what the media tells you. Dig deeper and ask tough questions. We need leaders who can stand on their own and make decisions that benefit everyone. This is your time to demand more from your politicians and choose those who can truly lead America forward. Let's get this conversation going. What do you think? Is Biden just a puppet like Laura said, or that's just a conspiracy? Who should we be looking at to lead America next? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you want more shocking truths, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel, because we have got a lot more of this. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.